Welcome back to another episode of Spotlight with Sandalina. I'm your talk show host, Sandalina Sitar, and today we have on Khushi as our guest, better known as She Talks and Eats. She is a South Asian influencer, the founder of Defeating Disorders, and she's a full-time marketing coordinator for a startup. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
So Khushi and I originally met within a couple months of me moving to New York City. We were both at the South Asian New York Fashion Week after party. It was at 235th, the rooftop. And I remember I showed up alone. I didn't really know many people, but I wanted to meet people. I think we were introduced by a mutual friend, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And we ended up chit-chatting a little bit, but I think after that we exchanged contact information and ran into each other a couple more times where I reintroduced myself, and I think she invited me to the volley party last year, and I was so honored because I was like, wow, we haven't hung out one-on-one yet, and here you are inviting me, and I got to know her, and I think we just hit it off, and I think we've kept in touch since, and she's a really near and dear friend in the city.
It honestly is crazy to me that it's been just a year.
Yeah.
Because it's like Diwali time right now, and honestly, it just goes to show that like some friendships you don't need to know for too long. It just as you hit it off immediately, and then it just like is the rest is history kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think going back to how we met, I just feel like I got such good energy from you the first time I met you. It was like you were radiating positivity, and to this day, like I will not say any other thing to describe you. I feel like that's every time I meet you, I'm just like I can't stop smiling. And so yeah, thank you again for having me. This is such an honor, and I'm so excited for you. This is the beginning of something so huge.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And by the way, you're glowing today. I love your outfit.
Thank you. My grandma made this cover up. Actually, she'll love that you said that.
Oh, that's so cute.
No, I feel the exact same way about you. You are a ray of sunshine, and that's why it made total sense to have you on. I think everybody could benefit from your contagious energy, and thanks for coming.
Thanks.
So, yeah.
So excited to dive in.
Yeah, let's get right in. Okay, so everybody knows you as She Talks and Eats. Let's go back to the very beginning of all that.
Mm-hmm.
So, where were you born and raised?
So I was born in India in the city called Chennai, which is like South India. But then I moved to New Delhi, and then I grew up in Gurgaon for the majority of my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that, I'm not too familiar with India geographically.
Yeah.
So is that more big city kind of?
Yeah.
Okay.
New Delhi is the capital of India.
Right. Okay.
And Gurgaon is like just the neighboring city right next to it.
Okay.
So it's So I lived there, and then I back in the day, like I used to swim professionally. So I was a competitive swimmer all the way from the age of 11. And so every day, like twice a day, I would have to go for training. And the pool was in New Delhi, so I would have to do the commute like 4 times a day.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So let's go back to the early days. So tell me a little bit about your parents. What's your relationship with them like individually, and what's kind of their parenting philosophy been with you growing up?
Yeah, I think I feel like every child says this, but I've been blessed with probably the best parents in the world. Individually and together, I feel like they've raised me and my sister with like just the right amount of I want to say mentorship and authority, where it's like they've given us the freedom to make mistakes, to choose what we want to be doing in our lives, but also they've guided us when we needed that support and that guidance and that strictness to some extent, like where my mom was she was obviously a very protective mother, and so was my dad, but they have been harsh with us at times when needed, not in a bad way, obviously,
Right.
but like a very, very good parent, like a very well-rounded, and like nobody gave them a textbook for it, but the fact that they've like done such a good job, and have raised 2 kids who are doing well for themselves is commendable.
So how would you describe your parents individually? So in my case, for example, I would say like I love both my parents, and I have different relationships with them.
Yeah.
I would say my dad's always been like the pragmatic, sort of more logical one that's always supporting me in every endeavor. Yeah. And my mom is also supportive, but has more emotions and more fears that she displays openly, at least.
Yeah.
So how would you kind of describe your parents in that same nature?
Honestly, quite similar to your parents. I think my father has been, I mean, he's been my best friend. Both my parents are my best friends in different ways. So going back to swimming, all the way from getting up 4:30 a.m. in the morning. My
Yeah.
dad would be up with me. He would take me to the pool.
Oh.
He would come back with me, drop me off to school. He would pack my mom and my dad would like as a partnership team. Like they would make my tiffin in the morning. Like I would have all my meals in the car. He would be there for all my PTMs. Like he would be there for all my tournaments. So he was the one person that like was my safe place.
Yeah.
And like I always tear up when I'm talking about him because I love him so much. And honestly, like I am who I am because of both of them.
Yeah.
And my dad he's been such a good parent, honestly. He's
Yeah.
always put his kids first. He's always been like, I don't know why.
No.
Why? I think it's also because my sister is actually getting engaged today, like in India, and
Wow.
I'm not there.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
But anyway, like going back to my parents, my dad was the dad who was always there.
Yeah.
Like everyone would always notice. All the teachers would know him as like Khushi's father.
Yeah.
And like he'd always be there. He'd always be so proud of me as well. Like he would come back from PTMs if I wasn't there. PTMs, by the way, a parent-teacher meeting,
Okay.
which you would have like every few months, you know, where there's like they meet and they tell you how your kid is doing kind
Yeah.
of thing. So he would go and he would take like a voice recording of everything the teacher has said so that he could like make me listen to it.
Yeah.
Because I was a good student in
Yeah.
school. So you'd always be like, okay, see like what your teacher said. We're very cute. And my mom was honestly just like the cutest person you will meet.
Yeah.
She has that like innocent side to her. She's very emotionally intelligent, extremely emotionally intelligent, where like if I'm going through absolutely anything in my life and I need to be vulnerable, like she's the first person who'll like be there. So in that way, I think she's made me like the emotional quotient part
Yes.
of like being in touch with your emotions, being self-aware, being vocal about things that like you would probably in other Indian families or in other South Asian families you would find kids being scared about like opening up to their parents. I've never had that because of my mom
Yeah.
and being how like receptive she is to honestly anything. Like, as a child I've been like, wow, like that is a very good parent.
Yeah.
Very good parenting technique. So I think both of them have done a very, very good job.
They've done an amazing job. Look
Yeah.
at the incredible woman you are today. But no, I think that really resonates. I think the bond that a father and daughter have is so strong.
So strong.
And the bond that a mother and a daughter have is very different, but also equally strong in a very different way.
Oh,
and I think
100%.
it's not an apples to apples thing, and I think they're both complementary to who you are as a person. I think
Yeah.
it's important to have those presences, and it's a blessing and an honor to be able to. So thank you for opening up, by the way, and also congratulations to your sister.
Thank you.
And we're sending her love from New York. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I wish I was there to celebrate the
Yeah.
big day with her, but you know how it is, work and all of
Yeah.
that other stuff.
And then you mentioned your sister, so tell me about her. What's your age gap? What's that dynamic been like growing up?
Oh, I love that question. I've never been asked that before, but she's my best friend. She really
Aw.
is. Like I can't. There's nothing that I don't tell her.
Yeah.
She's my safest. Like, she's like my soft board. I like go to her for advice. I go to her for clothes. I go to her for everything, honestly. And she's such a good human at heart. Like, she's probably the most genuine human being you'll ever meet. Very, very pure. And we have 3 years of an age gap, so
Okay.
it's not too crazy. 2.5 actually. So I've always like, obviously when we were younger we had a different dynamic because I would always be like, oh, can I play with your friends like when they're here, and she'd be like, no, you're the little sister. But now we're like always in each other's like friend groups, and
Yeah.
also I'm like dating her fiance's like long time best friend kind of
That's
thing.
the dream double date. That's amazing.
So now we're all like very interconnected.
Yeah.
in the group.
That is so beautiful. And I want to understand a little bit more about your upbringing in India. So now you're in the US. Tell me a little bit about some elements of culture shock, and maybe before that, just talk about what was it like growing up in India.
Back in India, my life was heavily sport related. So I was
Okay.
I was a national level swimmer. I wanted to swim for India at the Olympics. Like that was the
Wow.
dream. And so from the age of 11 to until my freshman year of college, I like swam. Like
Yeah.
that was my identity. I was the swimmer in school. Like I was also like a tall girl growing up. I mean, because of the height quotient, and I like obviously was always very fitness oriented, and like
Yeah.
my dad was always in a sport. My mom was she was a swimmer as well. So I think that given how involved I was in being an athlete, I was living a very different life than I am today, and also a very different life than I was living in comparison to like other students.
Yeah.
So like waking up at 4:30 a.m. is obviously not the norm for a lot of people, right?
Right.
And then going to competitions every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Having dealing with a lot of competition internally every day at training, and then winning races but also losing so many,
Yeah.
because like everybody hears about like, oh, she just won a gold medal, or like, oh, she like is going to represent India or whatever, but like nobody hears about the time when you like come fourth by 0.01 seconds.
Of course, yeah.
It like cultivates you to become a different human being, because you learn how to handle failure. You learn how to handle like, oh, it's not the end of the day if you don't win today. You need to be happy for someone else.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it like boils down to obviously how much hard work you put in, but also a lot of luck is involved, because everyone that makes like the semifinals or the finals has honestly worked very very hard to be
Of
there.
course.
You know, so when you go back home and you have to like channelize that disappointment as motivation for the next day to work harder,
Yeah.
I think that makes a child a few years beyond them. You know, it makes you a little more grounded, and also I think when you do, when you realize that like this is also not the end of the world, like you're not gonna stay at the top all the time. It makes you more humble, I would want to say. Like it also makes you realize that like no extremity, you know.
Yeah.
Be like moderate in everything.
Like a sustainable level of happiness.
Exactly. Like enjoy and like celebrate it, of course, but you don't have to be like, oh, now I'm like the king of the world kind of thing, because that'll bite you in the ass later.
Absolutely, like the point that you touched on about you can't win all the time. And I think that's a misconception with, we see social media. Oftentimes we're led to believe that everybody's constantly winning all the time, and it really alters our perception of reality and makes us feel so much worse about our failures.
Yeah.
But the reality is I think those failures should be celebrated, because you can't win every time, and it's those failures that teach you to get back up. I mean, I look back on my life and I think back to moments when I didn't get what I wanted, and that was the time for me to step up and learn and rewrite my own destiny.
Yeah.
So I love that you said that. It's like, you would lose, but then you would also win. And then the times that you were winning, you're happy. And the times that you lose, you learn to celebrate your peers.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get caught up in competition and insecurity, and in the adult world too, not just as children. And it's really crazy to see. So the fact that you had that foundation so young, and not just the discipline, I think as well, is really, really admirable. You were constantly swimming. So how did that impact your health and your daily routine and fitness and lifestyle?
Obviously so active that my diet was extremely like healthy. Obviously because I had to eat, high protein diet and like be healthy on the most part, because you need that extra fuel. But also had a very, very good relationship with food. Like I would never overthink in fact, I would eat whatever was in sight. My mom still reminds me of like times when I've come back home after swimming practice and like I've downed 6 aloo parathas with butter on it, and she's just like, oh my god, like, can I get you one more? And I'm like, maybe yes, let's do it. When that relationship changed with food, it was devastating for most of, like, not just devastating but so shocking that like it's the same girl who used to like literally inhale these parathas and wouldn't touch one anymore, so like that was honestly a very, very big drastic change in who I was, and what an eating disorder does to you. Also like in school, because of all of the swimming practices and tournaments, my social life would suffer, obviously, because like
it's a full-time commitment.
I wouldn't be able to go for parties. I didn't drink alcohol until like I came to college and stuff. So obviously a lot of those things makes you a little bit alienated from everything that's going on. You're not a normal teenager. You're not having so much fun. So that way I suffered, because I didn't have as many friends in school. There were times when I would be eating lunch alone, and like those are hard, obviously, as like a younger person, when you're just, and especially when you have like eyes on you. But it makes you strong also at the end of the day, where you're I've come to, like, as a 22-year-old, I can say that I am my own best friend.
Yeah.
And that's also amazing.
Yeah.
And I wish I had that confidence, like, when I was younger, where I was like, I'm happy to welcome anyone who wants to be in my company, but like, it's fine, you know. And back in the day, like, I did not know that.
Yeah. I can't even imagine a version of you that had to go through all of that, because every time I see you, you're constantly attracting people. And I mean that in the best way possible. People constantly want to be around you. So I can't even fathom that there was a time in your life where that wasn't the case. And maybe you had to learn to be your own best friend, not by choice, but by circumstance.
Yeah.
And that is appalling. But I think it goes to show that people are capable of so much more than they get credit for at some stages in their life. I think there's a lot of unrealized potential when we're kids, and people can be really mean, and they can there's a lot of mob mentality and a kind of insecurity and bullying and stuff. So I think it's incredible that you were able to come out of all of that and really be who you are today, and inspire people and motivate people to be better. I mean, there's two paths. When you endure something, you either become bitter and sad, and that's also very valid. I think it's fair. Or you say, I want to change, and I don't want anyone else to go through that. And those are two different things. So it's nice to see you tread the path of the latter.
I totally agree, and I think that's why I got into content creation.
Yes.
It's because I wanted to be a medium and a platform where I can be vulnerable and I can be honest, and I can help someone else who's probably going through something similar to, one, tell them that, like, I'm a real life example, that it's the time that you spent struggling is so important. You won't see it when you're in it, like, when it'll be the worst time, like, and those moments of, like, weakness, those moments of when you have to cry, like, cry. Be in touch with your emotions, like, fully be honest with what you're going through, because you'll come out of it a lot stronger.
You mentioned content creation, and I want to get into that. Let's talk about the early days of your college experience. So I think coming to New York was a part of your content creation journey. So I want to hear about the shift to America.
Yeah, I wanted to explore. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I still don't.
No one does, is the reality. I've learned.
But I didn't know what I wanted to study, and, like, the one good thing that the US gives you is you can explore different subjects, and you can take a lot of different classes while swimming. So that's what I decided to do. I went to a D3 school, which is Division 3. I swam competitively. Like, the plan was to swim competitive for all 4 years. While, exploring, I, like, kind of realized that I wanted to go down psychology more and marketing and business. So that happened thanks to being in the US. I went to Connecticut first, actually. So I was at Wesleyan for 1 year and my sister at the time was in New York. She was a student at Parsons. And I would visit her often, because that was when a lot of because I was so far away from home. And I finally realized that, like, swimming was so enjoyable in India, or, like, I really never questioned whether or not it was making me happy, because I had my father, my mother, and my coach heavily involved in it. So it was, even though it was an individual sport, it was all like a partnership, right? So now that I had to, like, when I was in Connecticut, I had to wake up, I had to go to practice, go to tournaments, be as diligent and as serious about it as I was in India, but without those, like, other counterparts in it. I realized that, like, oh, maybe I'm not enjoying it as much. And it just so happened that, like, COVID, that was the COVID year, like 2019. So when I ended up going back home, the pool shut down, and so for months, like, I was not swimming, and then I never really, like, came back to it, because I was like, it's not bad to, like, have some time off and explore different things that I, like, wanted to do. And during this time was also when I first started struggling, or like, first started questioning the way I looked. Because until then I was so okay with, like, being muscular, being, like, strong, because it was important for my sport. And, like, now I was in college, and I had, like, a couple experiences at parties, and I was talking to boys for the first time. Like, all of that was happening. So as, like, a teenager, or, like, just, like, fresh out of home,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, I'm not able to go to these parties. And I know it sounds like frivolous and stupid right now.
No,
But as a kid, like, you want to do these things.
you
like,
want to be
wanna
included. You want to
yeah.
meet people. Yeah.
And like going back to how high school was never like I was never a social butterfly. Like I was the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Never went to parties. So kind of just like wanted to explore that side of me in college, and acting as well, music and all of these
Yeah.
other things. So I was like, let's do that. Actually, like it's never too late to start doing something that makes you happy.
Yeah.
And I'd done swimming for 10 years almost at this point. So I was like, it's okay if I want to change the paths.
Yeah.
And starting from scratch and quitting something is obviously like terrifying.
It's so scary.
Because you've been in it for so long where it's like your identity. And a lot of the times like society will make you think like, oh, you quit this thing. Like that quitters never win, winners never quit. Like that was the thing that was ringing in my head. But now that I have quit something and like found something that actually makes me so happy and excited to wake up in the morning and start a new day, I can like, if anyone's listening to this like and they've had that like sort of calling but they're not able to do it for some or the other reason, like this is your sign to just go for it. Don't compare your page 1 to someone's page 543.
Yes. Yeah.
Like don't make yourself go through that. But when you start, like that's the sparking moment, and like it's just every day after that. Like, if you show up every day, you put in the work, you be consistent, there is nothing that will stop you from like achieving whatever you want.
That's what all of this is. What you just said, that's the beginning of my journey. So everything you said just like hit me in my heart.
I'm so proud of you. Like the reason I'm here today is, one, obviously I want to support every endeavor that you ever want because you will achieve so much greatness, I can see it. But also, like, I just genuinely want this to be a moment for anyone that's like listening to this or watching this, that like, if she can do it, what's stopping me from like doing what I want to do, Yeah. So that's awesome.
And I love, what I really like is you were able to take a step away from something you had known your whole life, right? And you're able to think independently, and you're able to look within and say, is this working for me or is it not? I think it's important. Goes to show that sometimes we should constantly be questioning kind of what we're used to and what we've been led to believe and what actually intrinsically makes us happy. I think one thing that I've learned through therapy, and we'll get to mental health, but one thing I learned back in therapy in California was it's so important to listen to that inner voice and that gut because it's talking to you. But there's a lot of noise. It's easy to have that get drowned out, but if you just are alone, you stop, you pause, you listen, it's there.
I agree.
And I think when you listen to that is one of the most beautiful and serendipitous things in life happen, genuinely. I really do believe that.
You put it so beautifully, and like, I think that like being in silence is so important, whether it's just for those like 5 minutes in the morning, or at night or whatever it is, but your intuition will guide you to your light. And that like subconscious will always kind of speak to you. Like whenever you have a sixth sense about a job or a person or whatever it is, do not ignore it. I think it's so important to be honest with yourself, even though sometimes it's hard to digest what you're feeling.
Yeah, sometimes that's the scariest thing, is confronting the reality and confronting it, not for anyone else, but for yourself. To admit to yourself first that maybe this isn't all that I thought it was, and maybe I need to change directions. And speaking of that, I want to talk about your journey to NYU. So let's talk about that change of paths.
Yeah, when I visited my sister very often, and the reason of visiting her very often was because I was struggling at Wesleyan mentally. So I wouldn't want to say that I was diagnosed with depression because I was not, but I was going through a lot of like symptoms of it.
Okay.
I to a point where like my mom and dad were either going to come to pick me up or I was going to go back to India.
Wow. Okay.
Kind of thing. Like, and I couldn't put a pin on why I was feeling that way. But I was, like, going back to my parents, I think they were so supportive during that time. Whatever I needed, like, they were ready to do that, even if that meant like losing so much of investment, like money, time, energy, everything. But yeah, I had that option. Thankfully, therapy was very good. Like, I am like the biggest fan of it, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it really just helps you, and I think the stigma is going away, and it should go away even faster.
Yeah. You should eradicate it completely.
But I remember that one day where I could not stop crying, like just tears going down, and I called this the organization at school called CAPS. I was like, "Hi, I need to book a session," and they were like, "We have availability like a month from now," and I was like, "No, I need help
Wow.
today."
Yeah.
And if I don't get it, like something bad will happen. I didn't know what was going to happen. It was very like it was just a bad day for me. And thankfully they made time, like they got, it was like an emergency thing, so I went, and I just, it was the therapist that I was there, psychologist or counselor, who I don't know exactly what their title was, but they were just the nicest human being to me that day, and I needed that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes just like having someone who doesn't know you personally but will be empathetic and listen to you,
We all need it.
it's exactly what I needed. And to just let my emotions flow, honestly, like there was no holding them back anymore. And that was cathartic. It was needed. And I think had I not had that day, I would have still been struggling. But those few months were very hard for me, and I realized that I was actually looking for more in life. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt like Connecticut would not be the right place for me,
Right.
and New York would. Because so I kept coming back, and I was like, wow, there's really no dearth of opportunities, events, and people in New York City.
Yeah.
Like there is a space for everyone, and
Absolutely.
there's a reason they call it the city of dreams, and
Yeah.
where dreams come true and all. And like,
They
I don't
do.
want to be cliche about it, but I just felt like I would meet my potential if I was in a place where people were doing the same.
Like-minded individuals, you need to surround yourself with them.
Exactly. Like I've never ever felt not motivated when I wake up and I like go to an event here. And I'm like, wow, everyone's doing their own thing. They're just like charting out their own path.
Yeah.
And look at you doing what you're doing today. Like you're going for it. And I think that's so, so inspiring. And you can take it as like, oh, she's doing so much. Like, should I be insecure? Or the way I see it is like, she's doing so much. That's so inspiring. How can
Yeah.
I do whatever
Yeah.
I need to do?
Yeah.
So I think it's a great place to be in, and that's why I transferred. I applied to NYU like soon after, and honestly did not have too much help there. Like my
Yeah.
parents, I didn't even tell them actually for the longest
Oh,
time.
wow.
I was just like, I think I need to do this for myself,
Yeah.
and let's see if I get in. And then I got in, and then yeah, the rest
Yeah.
is history.
So what year was this that you transferred into NYU? So what year were you entering, and what major did you go in for?
Yeah, I applied for psychology,
Okay.
and I knew that I wanted to be in business school as well. So I wanted to take some courses at Stern and
Yeah.
marketing and doing. So that's the path that I went down on. But this was in 2019 when I was a freshman in 2019.
Okay.
2020, COVID happened in March,
Right.
so we all had to go home. And then I took one semester at NYU online when I was in India. During this time, I really started struggling with my body image.
Okay.
And
Yeah, let's
it
dig
was,
into that.
yeah. So I think when I was in India, I realized that like, oh, there is such a thing called calories, and like the lesser you eat calories, the lesser you would weigh, and the more people would like you.
And just to understand, this was also stemming from maybe feeling a bit more muscular while you were in the swimming space, or was this unrelated?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a consequence of multiple different
Okay.
factors, right? Like when I was in high school and middle school, one, I was obviously the tallest girl in the grade.
Right.
Plus, I was not skinny. Like I was not, like scrawny or skinny or
Okay.
anything. I was a strong, muscular girl. So I was found myself in situations where I saw couples like cute sixth graders dating, and I was like, I don't have that. Luckily, I never felt like I wanted that either, because I was so involved and like so dedicated to my sport at the time that I didn't think that I was missing out on anything. But when I came to college, I felt like I need to look a certain way in order for me to be in certain relationships.
Sure.
And yeah, I think that I was a very, very vulnerable 18-year-old. So I came back and I realized that girls weren't eating.
You're seeing that trend here or there or both everywhere?
No, I actually didn't see it in India.
Okay.
I know it happens there, it happens everywhere. I didn't see it when I was young.
In what settings did you see that in New York?
At college.
Just in school? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
this was like a
would
normal.
see like after like swimming practice, some of the athletes that were guys would just eat a lot, and then the girls would be watching over what they ate. Which is not the worst thing, obviously, when you're making healthy choices. But if you're making less choices because of like, you know, just not taking enough, not nourishing your body the way you should, that's when it gets dangerous and alarming. But yeah, at the time, like I wish I had like studied about it. I wish I had studied how to maybe like lose weight in a healthy way, but
Sure.
I didn't know how. I didn't like have the patience or the knowledge at the time or the maturity to kind of like look at it in a sustainable way. So I went down the path of starving myself.
Okay.
And just like cutting food groups out immediately, like carbs are bad, fats are bad, like this I can't eat, that I can't eat. And
Okay.
it was like, now I want to whoever's like listening, it's so important to give your body everything.
Yeah.
Because one, you will reach a point within like 3 months maybe when your body is in famine mode, where it'll start saving and storing all of the things that you're eating. So like at some point your metabolism like will plateau and you won't lose any more weight.
Yeah.
In fact, whatever you eat will now be like, your body will be like, oh my god, I don't get enough, so I'm going to have to save this, because what if like I go into famine mode again?
Yeah.
So that way I think it was like, I learned through the hard way of like what starvation does to you, and like not eating is not the answer.
Yeah.
Right amount of exercise and moderation is, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, those like few months when I was in India, I lost all the weight that I like had on me. And because I'm tall as well, I would have like moments where people would be like, you should start modeling. Because also I, at the time, like I wanted to do acting, and I liked acting a lot. So because I have no connections to like Bollywood whatsoever, most girls would have to go through the modeling route.
Yeah.
And so I did. I got scouted by an agency in Delhi, and I kind of like had, you know, that gut feeling, that sixth sense that this maybe is not going to be the best thing.
Yeah.
But I signed that contract anyway, and it was, it taught me a lot, those few months of like going to, you know, going to my agency, speaking to the people who were mentoring me, and being body shamed by them, honestly, and still being okay with it, because it was their job and my job to show up still and be a face, not a voice.
Jeez. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the modeling part was extremely interesting.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, where I had a lot of fun. Like, it wasn't like I was just having a bad time. Like, it was great because I was getting attention, and I was getting like good outfits and being in fashion, and like I'd never explored that part of me, so I was definitely enjoying it. So I have nothing bad to say about modeling as an art, but as an industry, or as like the expectations that some girls have to live up to, because like we won't speak of it, but it's there, and you will be like, you know, treated a certain way, or not treated in a way which you would want to be. I think that just comes with like that industry.
But that's the thing about it. It's the highs and the lows. I
Yeah.
think that's what makes it so unhealthy is you get stuck on the roller coaster.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being in a toxic, unhealthy relationship. It's
Yeah.
like the highs are high, lows are low, and you're stuck for the ride. And
Yeah.
I think it makes total sense that it
Mhm.
got to that point.
Yeah.
You were eating less and you were starving yourself. So how long did this go on for, and what was kind of the worst of it, and what was the turning point?
Yeah, so I signed that contract sometime during the summer, so like June or July or something, and then I finally quit in December.
And what year is this?
In 2020.
Okay.
So just a few months of modeling, and I realized that like, and I was thinner than I am today, and I was still told that I'm not thin enough.
Wow.
So which is why like I realized it was maybe not the industry that I wanted to be in for too long, because I liked what I saw in the mirror, but I did not like who I saw. I was constantly hangry. Hangry is obviously anger induced by hunger.
Yeah.
And I was becoming a person that I was not proud of. So like excruciatingly, like microscopically assessing every inch of my body, and being like, oh, I'm fat, when I was like, there was no fat. I was also like not there, not present with my family, because I was so fixated on like certain like aspects about, you know, looking a certain way, which makes you realize that like that's not the end of the world. It's so important to be beautiful on the inside, because nobody that you love or loves you will care about whether or not you're like 2 kgs heavier.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
really
No,
don't.
they really don't. That's
In
the
fact,
thing.
they want you to be 2 kgs heavier just so that you're happy.
Yeah.
But
That's what we don't realize is love is not conditional.
exactly. So once I realized that like this was not just affecting my relationship with people around me, but also with my own self, where I was like, do I recognize who I am? Do I want to be this person?
Yeah.
Do I think that I am happy, or this is giving me happiness again? So I like met with that, and I was like, okay, so it means quitting again, but so be it. Like let's keep trying now. Let's explore everything. 2 3 things that I realized out of this though was like I really enjoy being in front of the camera.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that I want to be more than a face. I want to be in front of a camera, but I don't just want to smile, and I want to have a story and I want to say it out loud. So that's when I stumbled upon content creation. And a lot of people ask me like, was that the plan? Like, did you know that you wanted to be a content creator this one? And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I think everything happens for a reason. And one thing led to another, and I found myself being honest about my experiences in the modeling industry on Instagram. And I was like, I think some people might resonate with what I've been through. So let's just share. What's the worst that can happen? Like, maybe it'll just be something that people scroll past and it's fine.
Yeah.
Right? So I did speak of it, and it was a reel. And at the time, Instagram was trying to push reels.
Ah, okay. Good timing.
So a very good timing, yeah. I didn't know. Obviously, it was not a calculated decision. It was
Sure.
just something that like I was exploring with like. It became like a creative outlet for me.
Yeah.
But putting my story to it, and obviously having like my experience written down, in words, helped a lot of people. And I could see that like people were commenting on the reel and messaging me on the on the side like, this really helped me. This like reminded me that like inner beauty is very important, or like being in love with who you are and being okay with like letting things go is so crucial in order to like just be content at the end of the day. And so I was like, so it was one video and then another video that I posted, and within 2 3 weeks they blew up.
Wow.
So I had like 2 million or 3 million views on one of them.
That's
and then I was like, do people want to listen about this? Like, should I make more content about it? And that's when I like, within, I think it was again, it was like not a decision that I thought through that much, but I realized 5 6 posts in that I was really enjoying the community aspect of
Yes.
it. I was connecting with real people.
Yeah.
And people who I did not know were finding me, and like being like, this impacted me for the better, and I remembered to eat today because of this video.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's that no better feeling than that. Not even a gold medal at the nationals could give me that
Yeah.
joy. So I was like, wow, this is great. And if a platform like Instagram, which once upon a time was not the best for me, because I would go
Sure.
there to compare myself with other people, to their happening lives or their social lives, or how beautiful, how thin, how fashionable. Like, if I can use that platform to transform other people's lives and my own, why not?
Yeah.
If we use it productively and judiciously, I think every social media app there is is a boon, not a bad thing. So one thing led to another, and I changed my username from Khushi Jen something to She Talks and Eats.
So when was the official rebrand of your Instagram?
I think it was like August of 2021.
Okay, wow.
So it's
a little over 2 years now.
A little over 2 years
That's
now.
incredible.
Yeah.
Well, and what I love about that is you're listening to your inner voice, and these serendipitous things naturally happened around it. And I think that goes back to the point we were talking about earlier: is you just need to listen to yourself.
And I was quitting modeling. I told my mom, I was like, Mama, I don't want to just be a face. I want to be a voice.
Yeah.
And I wanted a story. I wanted to have my story be heard, because everyone has a story.
Yeah.
And everyone's going through something that no one knows anything about.
Yeah.
And if we're just all honest and vocal about it, I think everyone can just be more at peace with what they're going through, and also see that it's not going to last forever.
Yes, there's
This
light.
too shall pass. kind of thing, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have had a similar experience in social media. As I know that there's a lot of negatives that come from it, and
Yeah.
well, I'll be the first to admit I've gotten stuck in a negative thought loops and insecurities and all that. It happens, of course, but I think ultimately, like, if you can find a way to leverage your platform for good and shine light on the topics that people shine away from. One thing that I struggle with on social media is I think there's a lot of surface level content curated to make people feel bad about themselves. I think there's a lot of that out there. So if you can rise above that and do something a little different, I think that's why it hits, and it was such a big hit for you because people don't have the ability to look themselves in the mirror, admit they have a problem, and learn from it, and then talk about it. That requires so much emotional intelligence and grace and eloquence to do all of those things in a sequential and successful manner. And the fact that you pulled that off is just mind-boggling. And I know I see the stuff you post, I see your comments, I see the DMs you share with others to inspire. It's like there are people that have actually their lives have changed from seeing your content, and that is you can't quantify that impact. That just is. That's who you are, and it's so beautiful. So tell me a little bit more about social media, kind of what opportunities that's led for you in the present day.
Oh my God, it's honestly changed my life. The fact that I am one living in New York City, doing a job that makes me so excited to like wake up in the morning, and I don't just say that for like being an influencer. I actually mean my like full-time job.
Yeah.
I'm employed by this amazing company called True.
Yeah.
And I've given a TED talk. I've been on BBC. I've been on so many different like news platforms. I've been on podcasts before, and it's all because of Instagram.
Yeah.
And so whenever I think about like how this little app has like changed my life and has changed so many people's lives, honestly, I think it's wonderful, and I think it's like the future.
Yeah.
There is You can do absolutely anything. All it takes is a little bit of faith, a little bit of delusion. But thankfully, I was a student in college and I had the time, so I just like kind of went all in. And one thing led to another, and I even the job that I'm doing right now is because of social media. I got it because I was following this person who connected me to another person who they were following. They were like, oh, they're hiring, and they were looking for a social media like content creation personality, and I was like, this is such a right fit for me because it's the perfect blend between like fitness and health.
Yes.
And I think it's just it's crazy how like things fall into your lap, and like what's meant for you will find you kind of thing.
I absolutely believe in that. I do think that when something's right, things just fall into place, and it's just like, wow.
And one last thing that I think Instagram has given me is making me meet all of my best friends. Like I have had these like online relationships which went offline at some point, and I was like, we have so many points of commonality that like you just make me feel so safe, heard, valued, seen. You're one of them. You're one of these people, Sandy. Like I will at we obviously met in person the first time we met, but seeing your content on TikTok, I was like, this girl has some substance. She has intelligence. She's had some experience in her life that is making her do something that will help other people.
Thank you for saying
Which
that.
is why I wanted you in my life, because I want to surround myself with good people who are doing things for themselves, because like are not afraid to put in that work. Because I don't know if you've heard this quote, but you are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with.
Absolutely.
And so, one, I'm extremely, extremely grateful to the platform itself to like honestly connected me to obviously the world, but then also helping me find those like 5 or 6 people that I can call home.
Yeah. No, I think that's such a beautiful thing, and social media is just it's so incredibly powerful in its ability to bring people together.
Yeah.
And on the topic of bringing people together and forming these sort of friendships and relationships, I want to switch gears a little bit. So I want to hear about your general philosophy about welcoming people into your life. I know we touched on that a little bit, and it doesn't have to be romantic. I want to talk about platonic connection too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my mentality towards any new person is that they could be my best friend. So why not give them a chance? And thankfully I've had some wonderful relationships like growing up. Some of them are still in my life, some of them are not. And a lot of people have gone through this. I'm not the only one, but I've spoken about this publicly, where I had a falling out with one of my really, really good friends, who was so close to my heart, and it felt like a breakup, and it was heartbreak. But it taught me so much. It taught me how to be there for myself. It taught me how to be very, very independent, and it taught me how to have that self-respect going into any other relationship that I put myself in.
Yes.
And not to say this in a pessimistic way or like having my walls up in a bad way, but like when you have your walls up just a little bit, it actually helps you because you will only let them down if the other person has shown you that you can trust them.
Yeah.
So now my like mentality going into any relationship is that one, there is a certain level of detachment. Again, not in a negative way.
No, it's self-preservation.
Yeah,
I understand.
it's a way that I am okay with or without.
Yeah.
Obviously, you are welcome.
Yeah.
And I will celebrate our time together.
Yeah.
But like when I am away, when I am by myself, I am complete. I don't need anything to like fill this. There is no void to be filled.
And I think that's important because when you're filling voids of people in your life, that's when you start building codependent, unhealthy relationships. And I think that is those are always the downfall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that way, going back, I think everything somehow gets related to my childhood. Because I was so relying on my sport for like,
Yes.
I mean, I was so heavily involved in my sport that I didn't really have like a boyfriend or a friend that I would like, use as my safe person. It was mostly just like the water.
And I think one thing that we've also talked about offline is recognizing your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go a little bit into that. Were there any key moments or key learnings that you've had in your life thus far that you feel like really establish your sense of self?
Okay, I love that question because I don't think I can pinpoint like one particular moment. I think it's multiple different moments all the way from like having great times in school where I was, having lunch by myself when I would feel like, okay, like how do I talk to myself and be able to hold this conversation, one, without getting bored, two, without feeling like someone's judging me, and just being my own person right now.
Yeah.
To a point where when I was in college by myself and having those difficult conversations of whether I wanted to swim or not, and still like not having swimming or like acting or a particular gig or a friend dictate my self-worth, but like seeing these things as like external from who I am. Yeah. So like whether or not they were a part of my life, I would still be the person that I am. Also, dating in New York, I think, was wonderful and like taught me a lot because
teaches us all.
like it was. I mean, I honestly have no bad things to say about it because even if like you're 10 dates in and you haven't found your person, you're finding yourself every time.
Yes.
You're like learning more about what you want and what didn't happen. So like when I was early on, like freshman year, like sophomore year, when I went on dates, I realized that like if I really liked the guy and he would not reciprocate, I would find myself doing things which I would not do as a 22-year-old Khushi that I did when I was like 20 or 19.
Yeah.
And which makes me realize that like I had to go through a lot of those episodes in order to find now the person that makes me so happy. Basically, everything that I've been through has made me realize, one, choose distance over disrespect.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Choose peace over drama.
Yes.
And choose yourself over others, as bad as that sounds. Not selfish, you have to be self-full. You have to be totally okay with being by yourself.
Yeah.
And then I think at some point someone who's the right person for you will come along.
I love that so much. And I think it's interesting that you brought up dating in this realm and how your actions and course of thought has evolved from younger to present. I think love is such a powerful emotion. And I think what I love about love, I'm a big lover girl, as you know, is I think it really brings out different sides and thoughts and emotions of people that I don't think necessarily come out in friendships or in work or in school. I think it really opens up a deeper part of your experiences, your traumas, your insecurities, your strengths, your weaknesses. And I think it's so beautiful to see that come together in the form of an experience and kind of how that shapes you and impacts you. And a little bit similar to what you say is, it's no secret, everybody knows on my TikTok that I want to find a life partner and settle down as soon as I can. That'd be great. And in that experience, I've noticed such a shift in who I am now versus who I was literally just a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And I think you have to go through that stuff when you're younger where you do receive that disrespect.
Yeah.
And you don't have respect for yourself, so you put up with it and you stay. And I think the most important thing I've learned is to preserve your self-worth and walk away. And
Yeah.
now in New York in the adult world, I haven't, thank God, like knock on wood or something, but I haven't had a single negative experience. And I think it's because in the early innings, I see the sign and I'm done already. There's no, I think once you go through that experience and you know what you're worth, you have the power to walk away. And I think it's so beautiful because you've had your journey, but now you're in this happy, loving, incredible relationship. And I just want to know, what have you learned about yourself through that?
One, I think the person that you're supposed to be with, or the person that like is finally the right person for you, you have to have a lot of similarity in your values.
Yeah,
And
huge, huge.
and I was listening to this podcast a couple months before I met Shaurya, and I heard the person say, I think it was Mel Robbins or it was Rob Dial, but they said that write down all of the qualities that you want in your significant other, and when you have that list, be that list.
Yes.
And when you
Yes.
are everything that you want in your significant other, you will also attract someone similar. So for me, that was obviously like being close to my family. I wanted the person that I'm with to be very like
Yeah.
family oriented, to have some like affinity to fitness, and like also respect for women was very, very huge.
Huge.
Or not just respect for women, but also wanting to be with someone who is a working individual and like is standing up and financially independent. And I want to hold myself to those like expectations. I always want to be that independent girl,
Yeah.
who's, you know, doing things by herself for herself kind of thing. And I think when I met him, I realized that he was looking for something very similar. So
Wow.
it was a very like organic way, and I love that we met organically through people that I
That's
love.
always the
And
best.
yeah, yeah,
That's always
exactly.
the best.
So yeah, I think I've found parts of myself where I've realized what I am individually and what I am as a girlfriend, and
Yeah.
who I want to be. Even like obviously, every relationship comes with moments where you think about things of how you would conduct yourself if it was just you versus now
Of
that
course.
you're with someone, like you have to compromise on some things, you have to be adjusting, you have to like, you know, put the other person first in some ways.
Yeah.
And I see him doing that as well, so I want to do that as well, like kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think it has to be a two-way street. And I love what you said about whatever you want in a partner, you have to make sure that you're able to bring that to the table
Yeah.
fully and on your own.
Yeah.
And you have to be self-sufficient in that manner. And I love that because I think something I mentioned in another episode too is it's really important for us to realize that we can't just be asking for things. It's not Christmas, you know, it's you have to be able to bring something to the table.
Oh, I totally agree.
And you have to ask for something that's fair. And I always say, you know, people always tell me like, oh, like, you know, you have high standards, and I'm like, no, I just conduct myself at such a caliber, and I expect my partner to meet that requirement too.
Yeah.
I carry myself with empathy and kindness and grace and wishing the best for people, and I will take nothing less from my life partner. Nothing
Oh my
less.
god, I love that you say that, because I think that like no one should be settling for the bare minimum.
I think so too, and it's crazy because there are so many people out there that do, and it's sad because you see situations where people are stuck in it for life, and it's heartbreaking. And people, I think one thing that's really important is in South Asian households, it is very common for us to not be able to recognize unhealthy behavior patterns in the generation above. And I've seen that in front of my own eyes, and I've experienced, I've seen that manifest in the ugliest of ways in our generation. And all behavior patterns are, it's all learned behavior. If you see your dad not treat your mom right, then you're not going to treat your wife right. And it's so heartbreaking and it's so sad. And I really implore the people listening to this to try to dig within and understand what behavior patterns have you learned as a child in our culture, in our community, that are against that healthy image, and what can you do, and how can you work on yourself to bring what you want to the table. I think it's really important to do that.
Dissecting every experience that you've had and standing your ground when you put your foot down and you're like, I do not want to be in a similar situation from somebody that I've seen not having a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And so being okay with the fact that like I would rather not have one over settling for disrespect.
Exactly.
You know, and to your point, I think a lot of people in the South Asian like community, where this society kind of destigmatizes divorce or like separation or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like if there's a single mother or like a person who's not married is talked about,
Yeah.
you know, in not the best light. But if you really go into these houses and you see couples that are together, not all of them are happy.
No.
And it breaks my heart to think that like the person who's getting backlashed for not being in a relationship is probably happier.
Yeah.
And so if we can do anything for our generation going forward, is one being very okay and receptive to people, not like if compatibility is not something that happens naturally, don't force it.
Yes.
Because I feel like the children also suffer in the process.
I absolutely agree. And I think that that's an unfortunate reality for a lot of us and are representative for a lot of our experiences.
Yeah.
And it's sad, but I think it's important to be the one to break the generational cycle. So we've talked a lot about the past and the present, but let's take a little peek into the future. Do you have any plans, location-wise, what you want to be doing with your career, your content?
Oh my god. Okay, so I have this fun story and I have this little tattoo.
Oh.
And so it's a paper plane and a lot of people ask me like what it's for. And it's a symbol, it's a metaphor for basically that I want my life to go in whatever direction the wind steers me towards. So I kind of like don't have a plan.
Good.
And I'm totally okay with that. Like I just want to follow my heart honestly and let one experience kind of guide me to the next.
Yeah.
I do think that I know what I enjoy, so like it will be in a field where I'm connecting with people. So whether it's within marketing or whether it's like doing event planning or something, I don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I also have I dream of impacting people in a positive way. So whatever I do, I want it to be bigger than me. And I'm also totally okay with like not being in an industry that like is making a lot of money as long as it is giving me a lot of joy.
Yes.
You know?
That's one of the key themes of this show is understanding what it is that our American dream is.
Yeah.
And does it have to be a multi-million-dollar house, or can it be something that's more fulfilling in a more moderate kind of lifestyle? And I think
I agree. And honestly, like I've always grown up in like a upper middle class family. Like I've never been from the rich class of people. So I'm totally okay with not having that.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing missing out from my life. Like if I don't have a brand bag, like it's totally fine. As long as I'm going to bed content and happy and I'm waking up the next day with a smile on my face and I have little activities in the day that give me joy, like that's all I need.
No, I completely agree. And I think it's so important to have that humility and ability to want to live within your means and just focus on what really does make you happy. And you know what? I'll play devil's advocate. For some people, it is money. And that's fine. They totally should go for it. But I think that it's beautiful to be able to have an open and vulnerable conversation with people that think in different ways. And I really appreciate that. And I appreciate all of your time. Thank you so much for coming on today. It has been a pleasure and an honor. I will link her social media below. She has a lot to teach the world. So please do listen to her wise words. But anyways, thank you all so much for tuning in. And I'm your host, signing off.